Greetings everyone, this is Rambling Collector here, back with another book review for all of you today. And I won't lie to you guys, it feels like it has been a while since I reviewed a manga series, which is why I have decided to open up with one of my new favorite mangas that has been released in the past year or two, Crazy Food Truck by Rokurou Ogaki. So this series actually surprised me a lot. But what the biggest shock for me was the fact that it would only last 3 volumes. Which I won't lie to you guys, I was devastated about. But despite the fact of how short it was, I thought that it was very enjoyable for its brief time. And I feel like it deserves more of a chance for all of you, despite its brevity. So, with that being said, let's talk about it. Alright, so before I begin, I want you all to imagine this scenario for a minute. You're walking through the desert, or the equivalent of a blasted wasteland. You realize that the world you know has just been completely blown away. You're wandering the desert, achingly hungry. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, you hear the sound of a truck's engine. You look towards the horizon. And what do you find? You see, of all things, a food truck, being driven by a much older, middle-aged man, seemingly doing nothing but just driving through the desert, serving food to people who just happen to drop by. And that alone is an interesting premise, at least in my opinion. A post-apocalyptic world and you see a man just driving a food truck through the desert, only to then run across a sleeping bag sitting in the middle of the road containing a woman as naked as the day she was born, with mysterious healing factor and strength, and an insatiable appetite. And that is a basic premise of Crazy Food Truck. And I will say, just that premise alone is what actually piqued my interest for it, as well as the name, I'm not gonna lie. But I will say, despite its brevity of only 3 volumes, I will say, which in my opinion is a crying shame, and I feel like Crazy Food Truck could be longer. But just because it's short doesn't mean it isn't fantastic. So, first of all, one of the biggest highlights for me was both the great over-the-top action and comedic situations, because Arija, our secondary main character here, is essentially a bit dim, but she's not stupid. She's just very, very hungry, and Gordon is more than willing to try to sate her appetite, no matter how unending that may seem, or how much of a bottomless pit her stomach seems to be. And I will say, that makes for some great comedic timing right there. They could just be talking, then all of a sudden you just hear a massive growling like the roar of a bear, and you realize that's Arija's stomach going off. Anyways, I think I'm getting off on a tangent here, I'm sorry. So, I will say this much. I like the post-apocalyptic setting here for the story. It makes it interesting, it makes it a bit more of an eye-opening experience, going like, huh, I wonder what happened here. As well as all the giant animals that they run into, which seem mutated or completely changed from what they were. How in some cases the sands can be seen as a sea or an ocean for some of these aquatic people or aquatic creatures. More than that though, Gordon and Arija were both very entertaining characters. They could have made Gordon like this gruff, uninteresting character, but no. He's just a man who's obsessed with keeping his food truck up and running, as well as trying to feed the bottomless pit that is Arija, as well as also trying to discover where she came from. But over the course of these 3 volumes, we actually get a great chunk of their backstories. For instance, Gordon himself is a former general of a militia group, whom he had led to success against multiple campaigns, only for him to almost be betrayed and gunned down by assassins. But then they decided to let him play dead and go into hiding for some reason. I think it was mostly to prevent any other assassins from popping up. But the fact that Gordon himself had a new lease on life, he decides, hey, I'm going to open up a food truck and serve food to people. That alone is kind of funny. But then Ariza's backstory, how she is a laboratory experiment that has managed to escape. How she is known as a prototype doll, meaning that she has increased healing and combat abilities as well as an insatiable appetite, but she has to take these injections in order to keep those abilities, or else she could die. And I like how these two bond over simple things. One, a former military general, one, a military experiment. And what makes it ironic is that Arisia was actually cloned from a former subordinate of Gordon's, which really ties them even more together. But, in my opinion, I would say Crazy Food Truck was entertaining. At the most, if you want a fun, dumb series that really is just a breath of fresh air to read, this is it right here. But I want to go ahead and talk about the artwork real quick. So, the artwork. Definitely one of the biggest highlights, besides the story, for this brief manga series. I mean, just look at it. I guess because it was so short, they had a chance to be able to go all out completely. And I will say, they did a fantastic job being able to switch from the over-the-top action sequences. Like, seriously, first of all, Gordon's food truck is armed to the teeth with military-grade weaponry, such as cannons and just high durability from weapons such as bullets and everything else. The fact is, he's driving a tank on wheels disguised as a food truck, which I think is absolutely hilarious. Not to mention the comedy itself is really well done, with just how crazy these folks can be with how they have the high sequence chase scenes. The fight scenes are amazing and over the top. But most importantly, one of the biggest highlights is, of course, the food. Oh, dear God. What is it with anime and manga and making food look so delicious, whether on printed page or on screen? I mean, seriously, how many of you have been tempted to just jump into the page of a manga or an anime and grab that plate of food that you see right before you because, oh dear Lord, it looks delicious? I mean, really, just imagine that if you could get away with it, just grab that plate of food and just disappear. But yes, Crazy Food Truck actually presents some very reasonable recipes. I think one of my favorites that was actually shown was pork cutlet sandwiches, or BLTs. But there was definitely a lot more shown, such as sushi. And once again, the artwork really accents the story. It brings it more to life and really makes it pop in some cases right off the printed page. And now for my favorite segment, Random Thoughts. I won't lie to you guys. One of the things that I really wish this manga had was more. More than just 3 volumes, because when I first started it, I thought, okay, this might be a multi-volume manga. Maybe about like 8, maybe 6 volumes at most. No, it was only 3. I cannot tell you how devastated I was to find that out. That just as I was getting into it, it was going to be over. And which is why I was so hesitant to read number 3, because then once I did, that was it. This crazy series that I just started would soon be over as quick as a flash. But that's when I realized that's how a lot of book series might be, or comic series. Some of them you might be super invested in, they might just be getting good, and then as soon as you really start to get hooked into it, it's over. But that's when I learned a very good lesson. And it's something I've definitely learned a lot and had to deal with. Sometimes the shortest series are the most enjoyable. Because once they're done, they're done. They're over, quick in a flash. Gone as if they almost never existed in the first place. But what's important is to enjoy the short time that you have with these characters. And that is exactly what I did with Crazy Food Truck. And as a matter of fact, they actually have a great lesson in there sprinkled in. Such as, just live life to the best of your abilities. Make your own choices. Which is actually a pretty nice little lesson to see, especially when Arisia has the opportunity to live longer, but she chooses to stay with Gordon because she enjoys being able to enjoy all of his food and just living a decent life on the road. Seeing the world is what Arisia really wants. Even after her little sister, who is revealed in Volume 2, begs Arisia to come home so that way she doesn't die Arisha just tells her sister, hey, this is what I want. This is the life I want to live. And that is amazing to think about. Someone, despite knowing the fact that they might only have a brief time to live, because they're either going to get hunted down by the militia again, or will die soon after from some grievous wound that they can't heal from. Despite all of that, she chooses to live. Despite knowing that her time might be brief, she chooses to live her life the way that she wants. And that's something I think a lot of us can learn to do. It might seem or sound as simple as it makes it out to be, and it really might not be, but sometimes that's the whole start of it. Taking that first step and making a choice that you want to do with your life. That's a good lesson to learn, in my personal opinion. And despite how short this series was, I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, I might need to go back and reread it myself, to be quite honest. So, despite its short length, I would have to say with its great artwork, fun story, and great characters all throughout, I would have to give Crazy Food Truck a solid 10 out of 10. And if you guys are interested to see a series similar to this, after reading Crazy Food Truck, I would highly recommend Drifting Dragons. It has a very similar premise with amazing artwork, fun characters, and a very simple story. And to be fair, it is much longer than Crazy Food Truck. At about 10 or 11 volumes last I checked. Drifting Dragons was actually one of the first manga I ever reviewed, but looking back on it, it's definitely not one of my proudest ones, I'm not even gonna lie. But if you're curious to check it out for yourself, I'll leave a link to my manga playlist, Ramble, so that way you can go and check it out for yourself. Or, if you want to check out some of the other books that I've reviewed on this channel, or even comics, feel free to click the link to that playlist right here as well. And once again, thank you so much for listening to this crazy man's ramblings. I'm hoping that I might inspire you to check out this series for yourself. Let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know if you're curious to check it out for yourself. And once again, thank you all again for listening. And if you have any other suggestions or challenges for me you want to submit, please let me know in the comment section. I love a good challenge. Anyways, you guys, have a great day. This is Rambling Collector signing off, and keep reading, my fellow readers.